Hello, everyone. This is Rick, and welcome to Astral Club. This episode is Resistance Rescue from Astral Hell. Before we get started, we've got a new patron of Astral Club. Talk to Menace is an Astral Adept, and he'll get to watch videos early with no commercials. And I just want to mention to you guys that one of the things that I do right away is I disable what's called mid rolls. Um, the platform here, YouTube, automatically wants you to have commercials in the middle of your podcasts. I think that is annoying as heck. And I try to I disable it immediately. Now I've seen that some of my older videos they've re-enabled them. I hate it. Now they constantly tell me that's the way you make money. That's the way you make money. Uh, no thanks. I would rather have people hear the message and not have it broken up 30 different times by Raid Shadow Legends or some other stupid commercial. So I just want you guys to know that's why they don't pop up in the middle of my presentations here, because I think that's annoying, and I think most other people do too. So, anyway, if you'd like to be a patron on Patreon, there will be a link in the description, and there's also an email. We can talk back and forth a lot easier. Okay, great. Now, last time before the Q&A episode, I was telling you about an experience I had, and I had some struggles getting out of my body because of this energy shell. And I described to you how I was able to alter my vibrational signature slightly in order to escape. Well, that hole was plugged up. So I have now come up with another method, but I'm not going to describe it here because I don't, someone else is obviously involved here, and I don't want to give away that information. People who've been listening to this channel long enough might be able to guess how I do it, but I'm not going to go ahead and say it here. Just let it be known that I can get out, and that's how this particular experience occurred. So, when I did leave my body, I zoned in on the ident of my guide, and it was very strong again. I took off. I didn't lose consciousness, and I found myself in one of my favorite places, floating on one of the huge ice rocks that form one of the rings of Saturn. And before I did anything, I landed there. I always just am amazed at the silent beauty of Saturn when you see it so up close. It's just such an unearthly sight. And if I had time, I would have tuned in to hear its music, but unfortunately, there's just no time for that right now. My guide met me there, and he was soon standing next to me. And I could see by his expression that he didn't have good news for me. You could tell he was careworn. And I don't mean his visible astral body was careworn. You can sense these things. So when you sense someone in the astral, it's easy just to translate them into physical terms. It was almost as if he'd been up for a long time and hadn't had a good night's sleep. So I asked him, what's going on? What's happening? What's wrong? He said, well, one of the things that has gone wrong is we've lost some of our people. The monk and the virgin are missing. We don't know what happened to them. I sent them on their missions, and they never returned. Well, that really hit me hard because they're kind of my favorite co-students in Astral Guide School. So I said, okay, so you want me to track them down, see if I can find out where they are and bring them back? And he looked at me seriously for a moment and said, "No, that's not a priority right now." When he said that, I started feeling my anger rise. And he knows me well enough to know that I would react that way. I said, "What do you mean? These are our people. How can that not be a priority?" He said, "Look, the master has now, from what we have found out, consolidated his power. The council is now basically filled with his puppets. He's running things right now. We need more support if we're going to overthrow him. We're not going to just abandon your friends and fellow Astral Guide School students, but we can't make their rescue a priority right now. There are much more important issues that have to be dealt with right now." I've had experience in the military, as you know, and we're trained that the mission always comes first and that all other personal considerations come second. But that doesn't make it any easier leaving friends behind. But I certainly understood his position. So I said, "Well, then what is my assignment? What can I do?" Um, he said, "I need you to find another counselor that's been missing." I started losing my temper a little bit again, and I said, "What good is another counselor going to do? I already rescued the lead counselor, and our people are missing. What good is another lead? What good is another counselor going to do?" He said, "They're crucial because we need to rebuild the council. And this guy was the assistant to the lead counselor who you rescued previously. He's, you know, there are things happening on Earth, and you and everyone else on Earth has felt now for years that something is wrong, that somewhere along the way things took the wrong turn. That's what this takeover of the council has done. It's done it to not just to Earth, but it's done it to many planets." I didn't understand. I said, "Wait a minute. That feeling that I've had, and I'll be interested in any feelings that you guys have had. I started having that feeling years ago, but the master just recently took over the council. So how does this make any sense?" He looked a little exasperated at me, like a professor who is dealing with a student who just doesn't get the lesson. And he said to me, "Your advanced physicists understand that the effect can actually happen before the cause." And I thought about that for a minute, and it blew my mind. I said, I don't understand." He said, "We don't have time for a physics lesson. When you get back to your body, you can look it up, and perhaps you'll be able to get some explanation. We don't have time for that now. All you need to understand is that what the master's doing has been and is currently jeopardizing all of the order in our galaxy, and particularly on Earth, because I think he has a special vendetta against the Earth." I started thinking to myself, "Geez, Rick, I wonder why." Great, more guilt for me. Okay, fine. I never liked physics anyway. I was a business major. My last physics course was in the early 80s, and I hated it then, and I don't think I'd like it anymore now. Maybe one of my Astral Club members can explain to me how an effect can be caused before, or effect can happen before the actual cause. But whatever. So what's my mission? What do I need to do? He goes, "Well, I'm going to give you the ident of this secondary councilor. Oh, I said, so then I just, have to home in on the ident. That's shouldn't be too much of a problem. He said, well, it's where it is. I said, well, it can't be the black hole. Gulam, otherwise known as the master, is a little bit more imaginative than that. He's not going to put another one in that same place because he knows that I can rescue him. And my angel said, yes, definitely. This one is in the sub-astral hell. My heart just sank again. I've been there now a couple times, and it's horrible. it's it's just awful being there. I'll get into more of it when we get there. I'll try to describe it to you again. Uh, and then he said, I'm going to give you some extra energy as well because I think you're going to need it. Well, I was grateful for that. Obviously, I'll take whatever I can get. So he gave me the ident, and then he blessed me with some energy, which I definitely felt like. Yeah, did you ever have a cup of coffee after cup of coffee after cup of coffee without the jitters? That's kind of what that energy boost felt like. At that, he wished me luck, and I zoned in on the ident. And once again, for anybody who's new, an ident is essentially a vibrational address of a person or place, and even sometimes a thing. It's how you find something. It's just like if somebody gives you an address, and you go ahead and you find it, and that's how you get to a certain house. This ident allows me to find exactly where this individual is. And so I zoned in on it, and after a few seconds, I found myself encased in a place that really should have a sign, abandon hope, all ye who enter. It's the same kind of subterranean cavern with holes to caves surrounding it. Uh, the atmosphere. How do you describe this atmosphere? It's oppressive. It's filled with depression. Imagine the worst depression you've ever felt. The kind of depression where you don't even want to get out of bed. Imagine that times 10. I felt like I was suffocating. Like the air was solid with sludge. There was violence. You could sense the violence that was around you, and the hatred, the lusts, the despair, the regret. I think the regret's probably the worst. And what's worse is the longer you stay there, the more you start thinking those feelings aren't coming from outside you, but they're actually on the inside. And then it gets really worse. I don't recommend anybody come here. I wish this could be, and I hope it's my last visit, because it's not a nice place. This is the end of the line for a lot of souls, and it's just very awful. For those who are newer, I visited here several times before. One time with my Astral Guide School class, where I kind of went off my own, and I ran into an old friend. And then another time when I went back to rescue a soul whose name was Mary, and I was able to help her get out and get another body. Typically, what happens to land you here is you are so consumed in self-loathing, or so consumed in your own violent tendencies or lusts or drug addictions that you refuse all help, or you ignore any help that is offered to you in the lower astral. And you stay there so long that eventually you lose energy, and you reach a point where you sink to the lowest level you can sink to, which is the sub-astral, otherwise known as astral hell. The soul can't die, but once you reach that spot, you lose the energy to get out again unless you get help. And that help usually has to be requested and cried for. And it's just an awful place. People say, "Oh, I'm afraid to reincarnate." Believe me, wherever you reincarnate, it's 10 times, 1,000 times better than ended up in this place. I could sense the ident of this counselor, this assistant counselor that I was sent to look for. So I went down one of the passageways, and I won't get into all the descriptions again. If you look at the other astral, subastral hell episodes, you'll get all the down and dirty. It's, as I said before, consider it a place of ultimate despair where there is no light. And I don't just mean from a visual perspective, I mean from an emotional and spiritual perspective. So it's profoundly unpleasant, to say the least. So I wanted to get in and out as quickly as possible. So I walked down this, think of it as a cave, a rough hewn cave. That's probably the best way to think of it. And I was zoning in on this ident, and I could tell it was weak, but I could zone in on it. And after walking for a bit, I finally realized that I was approaching it. So I turned the corner and got the surprise of my life. There in front of me was Toadman. I couldn't believe my eyes. This is the guy, this is the soul, the degraded soul that I discovered in that prison in Philadelphia, who'd been haunting a cell for at least a century. He committed unspeakable acts to children in Philadelphia in the mid 19th century. And he was arrested and put into this prison in Philadelphia, not for those crimes, because they were never discovered. No, he got in some stupid bar fight and stabbed somebody to death, and that's why he went to the prison. And there he died, and there he stayed until I discovered him, and my angel friend helped to release him from that particular prison. But evidently, he ended up sinking to the subastral at any rate. And the last time I thought about him was when I was talking with Gulam. Remember, he was trying to get into my astral guide school, and he mentioned that he had saved who I called Toadman, but he called William. He said he'd saved him, and I'd actually given him credit for that, because when I encountered Toadman, all I ever got was hostility. And he pretty much had told me what I could do with my help at that point in time. So, to say I was shocked when I saw him there is an understatement. Behind him, in a very low energy state, looked to me like the counselor, because I could feel the ident. But he was very low in energy. As soon as we saw each other, Toadman sprang on me. And I could say we fought, but you can't really hurt each other. Essentially, he tried to draw energy from me, and it's a very unpleasant sensation. And I was able to repel him quite easily with the extra energy that I had just been given by my angel guide. So that came in handy, and he was thrown against the wall. There he recovered and crouched, staring at me like like a pit bull who's on a chain and with bared teeth. And I said, "What are you doing here? I thought Gulam had freed you." And then he said, "The master did free me, and my name is William, not Toadman." I said, "Okay, fine, William. Why are you here? I thought you were freed." He said, "The master said he needed me to guard this scum over here." It took me a few seconds to just kind of take all this in. I said, "Okay, so wait a minute. So the master freed you, but you're back here again in this same astral hell. And now you've got this job of guarding this counselor. Did he say, by any chance, when he was coming back for you? William, otherwise known as Toadman, didn't answer. And that's when I started laughing. And you could tell he was getting angry at me again. I said, he's playing you. Don't you get it? He said he saved you. What did he promise you when he saved you? Toadman just kind of glared at me again. I said, wait a minute. Let me guess. He probably promised you power second only to his, and probably all the little kitties you can play with. Am I right? I could tell by his expression that I pretty much hit the mark. I said, well, the master is running things up top now. He's got the council under his thumb. Our resistance here is on the run. We're on the ropes. So what are you doing here? How long are you going to be here? I can tell when you attacked me, you don't have enough energy to get out of here again. So if he doesn't come back for you, you're going to be stuck here again forever, guarding this guy. Think about it. You've been had. At first he reacted, violently, but he stopped himself and looked at me as I just sat there with a smile on my face. And he started thinking, and I could see that what I was saying was getting through to him, that he'd been betrayed. He'd been left behind again and fooled. And he's been used by the master. I said, the master cares only about one person, and that's the master. He doesn't care about anybody else. He's going to leave you here to rot. So then he said, what should I do? I said, well, you just finally asked the first sensible question. I'm going to tell you what you're going to do, and it's going to suck, but at least I'm going to be straight up with you. I'm going to take that counselor with me, and I'm going to use the extra energy I have to get us both out of here. But it's not enough to take you out as well. All I can promise you is that when we win, our resistance wins and throws out the master, that I'll come back and get you out of here. He looked at me like I was lying. He said, that's not much of a deal. I said, well, it's the best deal you're going to be getting today. And I keep my word. I don't think we can say that of the master, and you know yourself that the master is very capable of betrayal. I knew you were an evil POS, but I never thought you were stupid. So he mulled this over. And then with just this look of disgust and disdain, he said, take him. So I decided I wasn't going to delay any longer. I grabbed the counselor, dragged him back to the central chamber. And as we were leaving, I heard in the background, remember your promise. And I will. As distasteful as I found this individual, I don't break my word. So I used that extra energy that I had left to get us both back to that rock in circling Saturn. When I arrived a little worse for the wear, I could tell that my angel guide was very relieved. And certainly he was happy to see that very depleted, very tired counselor. But he said, congratulations, at least we have a little bit more chance of winning this war, because we need all the help we can get right now, because the master has he's made a lot of moves. It's almost as if he's been anticipating some of the things that we've been doing. So we need to do better. I said, well, I can feel that I'm being pulled back to my body, so that's about all I can do for now. So that was it. I returned to my body, and that's where we are right now. If you liked that episode, please hit the like button, share it with those of like minds, subscribe if you haven't done so already. If you have, hit that bell button. I always like questions, and I also like any comments from people who are more versed in physics than I am. If you can explain to me how the effect can occur before the cause, I'd love to hear about it. And if you've got any other theories or any other ideas, I'd be glad to hear it. And as always, I'm Rick, and I will see you on the astral plane.